Great. So, hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the India Conference at Harvard 2022. Our session for today is on creating global tech giants in India. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the India Conference at Harvard is co-hosted by students at Harvard University. We have a strong legacy of bringing together eminent leaders to enlighten us on the most crucial matters that are facing India. Before starting today's discussion, I'll just go over a few housekeeping items. We'll kickstart the discussion with opening remarks and questions and answers from our panelists and moderator. The conversation will go on for about 45 minutes, after which we'll open the session up to Q&A. We really value audience engagement, and so we hope you'll use this time to probe the arguments that are made by our speakers, and then use the Q&A function on your screen to post questions. We also request that you please tag us at hashtag ICH2022 to tweet and share your favorite quotes and insights from the panel. And so now, without much further ado, I'll just go ahead to introducing our panelists and our moderator for the day. So first we have Mr. Ajay Prakash Sahani. He's currently Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and IT, the Government of India, career bureaucrat, has held numerous roles in the Government of India, and some of his key contributions include the Total Literacy Campaign in Andhra Pradesh, the formation of IIIT Hyderabad, which is a center of excellence today in computer science and machine learning and artificial intelligence. And he has also previously served as Principal Secretary to Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. We have with us also Mr. Sunil Vachani. He's the founder and chairman of Dixon Technologies. Dixon, over the past few years, has really heralded the rise of the Indian tech manufacturing space, of Indian players in that space. And of course, we know today the market cap is close to 25,000 crores and rising very rapidly. We also have with us Pranay Agrawal. He is the co-founder and CEO of Fractal Analytics. Pranay has led Fractal to be one of the most respected analytics companies in the world, and of course, a unicorn. Fractal is today working with over 50 of Fortune 500 companies to help them include analytics and data science in their decision-making. Our moderator for the day is Neelkanth Mishra. He's the co-head of Equity Research Asia Pacific at Credit Suisse. He's also a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council and has been an advisor to the Government of India on numerous committees, including on revenue neutral rates, on fiscal responsibility and budget management, and is a very keen observer of the Indian economy. So thank you so much. Looking forward to the discussion today. To my mind, it will really help us lay the path for how we expand to a $1 trillion digital economy and look at building global size tech giants in India. I'll hand it over to Neelkanth with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Raghav, and thank you everyone for joining. Absolutely a privilege to be moderating this esteemed panel. I'm bubbling with questions which I would like to ask these leaders who've clearly thought very deeply about this challenge. In the last 15 years, leadership in market capitalization, people in the markets like me focus a lot on that, has shifted from energy and financial firms to firms in technology, right? So Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, or closer in Asia, Samsung Electronics and TSMC. If you thought market capitalization is fickle, and overstates the importance of tech firms. So even in the real world, electronics are the fastest growing sector in the global goods trade. Nearly 30% of all global goods traded is electronics. The total value is already about $6 trillion. 10 years later, tech can be bigger. It's making inroads into almost every sector. India has been noticeable by its absence in the global league tables. Despite some encouraging growth since 2013 on the hardware side, its share of global electronics manufacturing is still minuscule. I think we'll pick Mr. Sahni's brain on what the roadmap ahead of us is. On the software side, India has the largest pool of software engineers in the world, but its share of value added. So there's a lot of work being done in India, but for companies which are still foreign, and we need to develop Indian giants. Most importantly, given that the levels of high intangible investment, the sector is susceptible to an industry structure which is winner takes all. So it kind of creates giants. So either you are there or you're a nobody, and you're sort of feeding off the morsels left by the bigger ones. Giants can create fertile ecosystems, foster open innovation, and therefore support much larger value add and larger numbers of jobs. So it's put simply, we need to have homemade tech giants, whether be it in software or in hardware. There's no better panel I could have thought of than the one we have here. So the way we start off is that we'll have each of the speakers speak for 3 minutes each. So we'll start off with Mr. Sahni, then have Sunil share his views on electronics, and then Pranay on the softer side and high tech and artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And then we will have moderated Q&A. And the last 15 minutes, we will leave for questions from you. So over to Mr. Sahni.
Thank you, Neelkanth ji. It's a pleasure to be a part of this wonderful forum. I think India values giants. It's very clear in the entire global ecosystem that giant companies are adding tremendous amount of value. Not only are they adding value by themselves, they are also giving rise to significant ecosystems. In fact, the ones that have grown most rapidly and grown to a humongous size, along with them, large ecosystems have grown. So it's not just the giants that we look towards. We look towards what they are able to do to grow a complete ecosystem around whatever they are really good at. And as long as the whatever play they are in, we like 2 giants more than 1. We like 3 giants more than 2. And in any given area, I think that's one thing that we love giants. We love more and more giants rather than just one in any area. And we love especially those giants that grow many other companies along with them. So we do that in electronics. We want giants in, and we have done our bit to attract the existing giants from across the globe. And we are at it even today. And we would love to see Indian giants grow. We have seen giant companies in the IT service sector. We would love to see more and more companies in the products and SaaS and cloud-based services space grow to a gianthood. And I believe that is a work in progress, and we see tremendous potential for that to happen today. And expect a large number of them to take shape. New technologies, again, I think we have a very interesting things going on. Not visible giants yet, but I would say that 2020 is we see giants come in from they've started by becoming unicorns, and they will add a 10x twice over, and
looks like Mr. Sahni's connection is a bit weak. His picture seems frozen as well. So maybe while we wait for his connection to improve, maybe we can move to Sunil in the. Okay, I can see him moving.
Okay, so No, I think I had closed on my initial remarks. I had closed them, so you can carry on. Back to you. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Neelkanth. I think Neelkanth, it's this very exciting time for us in the industry and the country because we are sitting on a tremendous opportunity, and that opportunity is to make India the next hub for electronic hardware manufacturing. We in the industry call it the Y2K movement for the electronic hardware industry. And why we say that, because I think if you look at the sheer numbers, there is no doubt that there is a huge opportunity. If you look at the domestic market itself, we are looking at an opportunity to manufacture almost $300 billion worth of goods for the domestic market. That's purely looking at the import substitution. There's also a huge export market for these products. If you look at the electronic manufacturing services as an area itself, the global market size is almost $500 billion. So the numbers are extremely large. If you look at the penetration of some of the products that we talk about, it's extremely low in the country. You'll be surprised to know that hardly about 12% of the people in India own an LED television. Hardly 15% of the people in India own a washing machine or air conditioners, and the numbers are similar for across product categories. And if you combine that with the very favorable policies of the government of India that they have launched in the last few years, and if I would name one, I would definitely like to call out PLI as a scheme, which is the production linked incentive scheme, as a game changer. And why I say that? Because PLI helps build Indian champions, which you talked about. PLI helps us build that scale, which we need to address global markets, which we need to become globally competitive. PLI also helps build a strong component ecosystem, and it also helps companies investing in design-led manufacturing. It's very clear that a lot of countries and companies are looking at an alternative to our neighbor. They are looking at a +1 strategy. And I think if I were to look at, I think there are only two countries, India and Vietnam, which could be the possible destinations, which could emerge as alternatives. So we're extremely excited about this opportunity. I think a lot needs to be done. I think what the industry needs to do is already start looking beyond PLI, because let's appreciate that the PLI is for 5 years. And we need to ensure that we do not depend on any subsidies after 5 years. And I'm sure it can definitely happen. So what we need to do is to invest in further deepening the scale, and also developing a strong and vibrant component ecosystem. Also invest in design-led manufacturing, because I truly believe that that's where our strength lies in India. So I think these are some of the things that the industry needs to do. And I think as far as the government is concerned, I think we're already looking at building a world-class infrastructure, and also to ensure that some of the disability factors that we have, they go away over these 5 years. And if I were to name some of the disability factors, I would definitely call out, let's say, the high land acquisition cost, the high logistics cost, which is there because of the infrastructure, the high power cost because of the uninterrupted the erratic power supply that we get in some of the states. So I think these are some of the things that government is already very focused on, and I'm sure they're also going to be looking at it. Well, the whole idea is that in the next period of 5 years, we need to be globally competitive without any subsidies. And I'm extremely confident that we as a country and as industry are definitely up for the challenge.
Thanks, Sunil. Pranay, over to you.
Great. Thank you. So I want to call out a few trends that the world is experiencing and we will continue to experience on an accelerated basis, right? Number one is that it's now being called out quite clearly that we are soon going to enter an era of decline in population. Across the developed world, that has already started to happen in the Western countries. And China, India, we are all going to follow suit very quickly. And in these kinds of matters, like 30, 40 years is quick, and that's coming. And that means that there's going to be a big need for enhancements in productivity, and there's going to be big needs in identifying ways to service and address the needs of an aging population and with fewer younger people working and stuff like that. So that's kind of, one. And the second thing is that digital transformation will accelerate. And digital transformation will accelerate. Our consumption of digital goods is going to increase. It's already increasing, and I think that trend is sort of just going to accelerate. Our using digital means to consume physical goods, I think that is going to also continue to increase. So we are on that path. There is no question about that. I think the third big thing here is sustainability. It's very, very clear that we have to, as a society, act in very, very different ways if we want to sustain the human race while improving our quality of life. And addressing all of these issues, I think technology is going to be a key component of all of this. And what we've seen over the last 8 or 10 years is that AI-driven technology or AI-driven digital transformation, that is becoming critical in addressing all our big problems. And it's going to be that way going forward as well, whether that's in the area of healthcare, providing access to health, providing good access, providing speedy access. I think that's going to be a big factor, whether it's a question of educating people, whether it's a question of getting the kinds of things that people need in different parts of the world, building a more safer world. And I think all of this AI, technology, digital transformation is going to play a big role. The interesting thing here is that the giants of today have created hardware and software infrastructure, whether that's the corporate world you speak of or the university ecosystem. They have created the infrastructure and the underlying technology for us to work off and address these problems. And I think India is well placed to do that. I think we have lots and lots of problems to solve. Some of them specific to the country, some global, and I think it's an exciting time.
Thanks, Pranay. So those are extremely relevant and I think very broad-based starting comments from our three panelists. So jumping into the questions, let's start with Mr. Sahni. I mean, you're right at the hub of things. I mean, the heart of things. So let's just think about hardware, right? So software, and I'll have questions on that. But I think on hardware, the reality is that before you can grow a forest or before you can grow a giant sequoia, you need to prepare the soil, plant a seed. I mean, how do you create an ecosystem where there is none, right? So even having small companies used to be a challenge. So when you started at the ministry 5 years back, the challenge was to seed an industry and to create an ecosystem. We've come clearly a long way since then, and Sunil said how path-breaking your PLI schemes have been, and actually the fact that they're going to end in 5 years is also a message to the industry that they need to become self-sufficient, and that drives innovation. So now we have groups like Tata and Vedanta willing to commit large sums of money. Could you talk us through the major challenges you faced and how you see the industry in India 5 or 10 years from now?
Yes, in fact, we were at a bit of a low ebb in hardware manufacturing about 7 to 8 years ago. And we have really come a long way since then. Between between FY 2015 and FY 20, we grew at about 21% plus CAGR. From $29 billion of manufacturing in India, assembly of electronic goods in India, to $76 billion. Then for a year, we have plateaued at, and we remained at 75. This year, I expect it will be somewhere between 85 and 90, maybe closer to 90. And then 4 years hence is the real gradient where we hope to see us get to $250 billion. In fact, the industry has targeted an even higher quantum. that should see us grow at almost 28 to 30% CAGR. So that's the journey we are on. We if once you start attaining scale, many problems start solving themselves. So to begin attaining scale, we had to start with attracting the giants. And the place we had momentum was mobile phones. So we basically targeted the two biggest names in that sector, and happily we are able to actually bring them in. So it was very clear we'll do whatever it takes to get them in and to get them commit to very large scale manufacturing in India. Manufacturing in India, not just to take care of the Indian domestic requirement, but also to prepare for large scale exports from here. So that has started happening. We did an MSIPS scheme. We did a electronic manufacturing cluster scheme. We have graduated that to production linked incentive and to specs, which is for electronic components and everything around semiconductors, and EMC2, which is basically trying to create large manufacturing clusters, which are led by each one of them to be led by a giant. So we see tremendous growth, not just in mobile phones. Mobile is where we started. I think automotive electronics is going to be another major category. Industrial electronics, consumer electronics, defense and strategic electronics. These are other segments where we see promise today. An area where we used to be very weak was also medical devices. We see a lot of traction there. And then there are, smart meters, for instance. India is going to require an awfully large number of smart meters in the next 3 to 4 years. And the moment we build capacity, we create a significant segment even in small, tiny spaces. And drones, robotics, additive manufacturing, AR and VR look very, very interesting today. And so do devices making. We are also having 2 stacks come up, full India stacks come up in 5G. I expect these will be a reality very soon. And around that, again, the telecom products manufacturing can take seriously grow around that. So these are the areas I see, and from my viewpoint, from what is visible to me, I am very excited about what I see.
Thank you, Mr. Sahni. That's actually so that what you said should be exciting to anyone watching India. So quickly moving to Sunil, who's actually looking at it from the industry's perspective. So as you decide or you explore the opportunity, so the 5-10 year roadmap is clear. Where do you think the next 5-10 years of opportunity lies, right? So clearly, I think it'll take many years to build an Indian TSMC, if at all, right? And similarly, just owning a brand, I don't know if that, I mean, some people think that's the best way to capture value, but I'm not so sure, especially in the tech world. It is easy to build a brand which can add a lot of value. So as you explore the opportunity, where do you see the biggest opportunity given where the Indian ecosystem is, right? So you learn to first know how to walk before you can run, and stuff like that. So if you could run us through what the roadmap is like in the near future, even as we dream of the distant future.
Yeah. So Neelkanth, I would say that I think we need to look at the areas or industry where we've achieved a substantial amount of success in the last few years. And I think if I were to pick a few industries out of the industries where we've done very well, I would pick mobile phones, as Secretary Sawhney rightly pointed out. I would also pick automobiles, right? I think these are 2 areas where we have created large scale, where we have substantial manufacturing in the country, where we have a very strong component ecosystem, at least in automotive. And also, at least in automotive, this industry, one industry where we've also built global brands. So I think we need to see that what have we done right in these sectors and replicate this model across many other industries. So going forward, I would say that we need to identify champion industries, champion sectors, and Indian champions also, right, who could become large global players in times to come. I think you asked this question earlier, that does India need large champions, or do we need to encourage really MSMEs to grow? I think it needs to be both, because once these champions, Indian champions, are born and they grow and they become large global players, they will have in turn help large many MSMEs also to grow in the country. So I think we look at areas where we've done well, and I think we replicate that model. And I think answering your question, our future lies in India in design-led manufacturing, and also combining our strength in software and hardware. So I give the example of a product like set-top boxes, where India also needs millions of set-top boxes for cable, satellite, and internet. And as we know, set-top box is a product which requires skills in both hardware and software and design. And if you see, this is one area where we have companies who are designing set-top boxes. We have companies, thanks to the policies of Mighty and Secretary Sawhney, that we have company now who've also developed Indian CAS, right? And also companies who are manufacturing in India. Now, I believe almost 90% of the requirement in India is met through domestic manufacturing. So I think, coming back to the question, we need to get to pool in our strength in software and hardware, and design products for the world, design products as a black box, which we can offer to the global markets.
Thanks. And if I could have a quick follow-up and have both maybe very quick interventions from both you and Mr. Sahani on the auto side, because see, what I realize is that there are two ways to grow. One is that you grab share, which is shifting out of China. Is it runs out of workers or for other reasons? And the other is to ride a tidal wave, right? That's the best way to grow, because the tailwinds then push you up. And both you and Mr. Sahani mentioned automotive, and the way I see it, there is a lot of disruption happening in autos, right? So there are new OEMs entering. So there is a Apple car, expectation of an Apple car, a Sony car, a Xiaomi car, and Foxconn is wanting to do OEM work, and there is the EV transition happening. So there's so much happening. I think India perhaps has a great opportunity to catch on to this trend a lot earlier than it has. But the question is, do we have what it takes to participate in this? Do we have the firms which will be able to sort of jump onto this train? So maybe we can start with Sunil and then have Mr. Sahani comment.
Yeah. So Neelkanth, I feel that if you look at the history of the automotive industry, and one of the reasons, and a lot of people, economists might not agree with this point of view, but I feel that one of the reasons that this industry has grown to where it is now is because we had the right duty structure in the first place, right? And when I say that, I'm talking about the custom duty structure. So a lot of economists, in the last few months have talked about the duty, high tariffs that we have in India. That do we need these tariffs? Should we eliminate these tariffs? So my point is, we don't need high tariffs. We need the correct tariff structure in the country, wherein first you are encouraging the manufacturing of the finished product in the country, and gradually you introduce a phased manufacturing program for the components. And I see that, if you look at the automotive industry, the reason that you have giants who have flourished, and now there's also a lot of MSMEs that are there, because we have the correct duty structure. And contrast to that, if you look at our electronic component industry, there's hardly any manufacturing of components in the country. We are importing most of the components. And I would say one of the reasons is that, we very early, we signed the ITA 1 agreement, if you recall, where the tariffs on all components became zero. Now, that is absolutely a fine idea, but you have to think that is the industry ready to face a global competition, right, on zero tariffs? It can happen over a period of time, but it cannot, you cannot ask an infant to run from day one. So coming back to the point, I would say that I think it's very important that we have the right tariff structure. And then we encourage companies to invest in component manufacturing, and then encourage companies to also invest in design-led manufacturing.
Thanks, Mr. Sahni.
Yeah, I think automotive electronics looks very promising, and the moment automotive electronics joins the party really is on. Right now it's been led by the mobile sector, but given the entry of a number of companies in this space, and the plans that existing automotive players have unveiled, I think we should see a lot of traction. One interesting thing is that, we might not really start with so much competition to the global giants in four-wheelers. We might just be doing that in two-wheelers. So that's a segment which is entirely our own. And we already have reasonable competitiveness, serious competitiveness, in fact, I would say, in the non-electric segment there. And over the past couple of years, we have seen phenomenal plays emerge in two-wheeler segment. So I think we will grow an Indian way. We need not be copycats in something that everyone else is doing. We'll create a niche space in the automotive electronics and grow on top of success. So I think it's very important that we build on success, whichever side it comes from. And it could happen in, I would see some very interesting things even start to happen in drones. So it's quite possible that, we'll suddenly see some excellent things emerge in unexpected areas, all of them around transportation, but maybe not entirely around the four-wheel segment, which is under the Microsoft all the time, a microscope all the time. So,
yes, thank you, Mr. Sahni. Clearly, there is promise there. So, Pranay, coming to you, in an area where India is seen to be dominant, right? So, so it seems that we have created giants in IT services. This is not in profits and market cap, but at least in the number of people employed. But this kind of a model, which is people heavy, it's heads and hands. I remember someone, when I used to be a technical architect with Infosys, FC Kohli comment was that, oh, we are just hiring heads and hands. I felt violated. I thought I was sort of adding so much value, and this is where I'm being turned into a commodity. But now that I see the older man looking in, well, that's what IT services is about. But what you're trying to do, what your firm is trying to do, is to move beyond just the headcount, right? So to create IP which can really scale, which can create profit pools which are much larger with fewer people. So how rapidly can firms like yours scale, and how do we see, say, 15, 20 fractals emerge?
Okay. Firstly, I just want to say that I'm not a big fan of the narrative that, the Indian IT companies have just added heads and hands. I think they have done some tremendous value-added work, and they have enabled the scale-up of the, IT industry, IT consumption globally. And it's been tremendously value-adding to both their clients and to the economies where they're operating, whether large majority of their workforce is in India, but these companies are now all over the world, in Latin America, employing thousands of people there, employing thousands of people in Eastern Europe, and so on and so forth, and creating tremendous opportunities for people to deploy their skills against something very, very useful and meaningful. So I'd just like to say that, first of all, right. Now coming to what we as Fractal are doing. And yes, we are operating in a very sort of, I would say niche segment as far as technology goes, right? And as I was saying earlier, there is a lot of fundamental infrastructural technology that has been developed, right? And that has come out of years of creating an ecosystem, whether that's the university ecosystem or whether that's just these companies operating together. So you see that in the Bay Area, you see that in in the Pacific Northwest, you see that in the Boston corridor, and so on, right? The great thing is that the technology that these companies have created, we around the globe, everyone is starting to understand them, has started to figure out how to use them very, very effectively. And now that's where the second part of it comes, which is around applications, whether they're enterprise applications or whether they're consumer applications, right? And I think the number of problems to be solved are just infinite. There's tremendous amount of problems to be solved, and I think that's where several companies are headed. And I can take names such as Zoho, which is a company that seems to fly under the radar. It's about a $600 million company, software company doing enterprise software, and growing very, very rapidly out of India. And then you've got a whole range of Indian sort of consumer tech companies, whether that's in food delivery, ed tech, healthcare, ride share, and so on. And I think we're going to see that. And given the scale of the market that India offers, I think it's only natural that these companies will, develop the ability to scale globally as well. I'll just give you one example, which is, coming from the Fractal, portfolio. Our company Cure, which is using deep learning technology to provide diagnosis on X-rays. It's a global problem. X-rays are 25% of X-rays are, interpreted incorrectly. Even in the US, right, in the most developed sort of places, and not to mention the fact that there is a big shortage of radiologists, and diagnosis gets delayed. So we created the product Cure, which provides an automated diagnosis on X-rays, and this is a global application. And it is currently being used globally. I don't have the latest numbers, but hundreds of sites across the world. In North America, in Europe, in Asia, South Asia, Middle East, everywhere, right? And so I think that's the kind of opportunity this sort of new world presents. And I think it's a question of vision, it's a question of ambition, it's a question of identifying that market opportunity and really putting the energy and resources behind that. And I feel confident that India will produce and is well on the path of producing many such companies.
Thanks. And I did not want to dish because I've worked for Infosys. I am quite proud of what they've achieved. I still feel as if I belong there and they do well. And what I think what they've also done is help create this pool of young, hungry developers who are now at the cutting edge of software. And therefore, they're now feeling, and with the venture capital coming in, they're also feeling empowered enough to try to solve the hard problems. And
Absolutely.
And while I think Sridhar at Zoho had to do it the hard way, right? Start small, start building slowly. But I think it's come a long way. Phenomenal company is built. But let me have a quick follow-up for you as well. So there's a lot of China plus one discussion that happens in hardware, right? But one aspect which I think is not that well appreciated is that the Indian software companies are right at the core of every single large multinational in the world.
Yep.
Right. And there is a very high level of trust. So no one has ever questioned. I don't want to jinx it, but do you think this is an advantage? Because I suspect that this also is a huge advantage that especially in a cloud kind of setup where you're kind of working with open internet, to actually trust your customer data, your financial data with a software firm is also, I think, requires a level of comfort, which perhaps the Indian firms do provide.
I completely agree with that. I think trust is a big factor. There is got to be trust, of course, at the level of the individual organization that you're dealing with, but at a broader level, it's the geopolitical trust, which no individual company can overcome. And currently, certainly, I think that is a big factor in releasing critical pieces of your data or providing your partner, your technology partner, and insight into your plans, into your data, into your infrastructure, technology, etc. And I think India certainly enjoys that advantage at this point of time, and I think that's going to be the case as well. I think where China has done exceptionally well on this part is that they have had a national strategy around AI. And therefore, the development and advancement that they have made in this space is really tremendous. And while at an individual level, companies in India are, doing that, I do believe that, at a state level, I think a lot more can be done so that we are not left behind in this.
Thanks, Pranay. So moving back to Mr. Sahni, the history is replete. See, and we are not going to create the next giants by copying, right? So you see that companies have globally have broken out of their mold by innovating or dominating a new segment, right? And so I want to focus on this concept of open innovation, where there is a bunch of companies which maybe not by design or even by accident are sharing experiences and therefore collectively going up the value chain. So there's this example of how in the late 19th century blast furnace development, looks like we've lost, oh no, we're having it. So the blast furnace development in the UK happened through small firms experimenting with what is the right height, what is the right temperature, and they were able to increase the height like some 70-80%, and productivity went up. How do we foster that? I mean, because this is clearly something that the state needs to do. The industry bodies will have their own role, and I'll have some questions for Sunil as well. But how does the state enable or catalyze this kind of open innovation, which then carries the industry forward and not just rely on technology coming in from outside?
Neelkanth, I think this is one area where something very exciting is starting to happen, has been happening and is building momentum currently in India, which has not got noticed adequately. See, the national public digital platforms that are taking shape, starting with Aadhaar as the a usable online digital identity, UPI, lightweight national platform for digital payments, which added excitement, brought zing into the on top of conventional core banking systems, and has seen phenomenal exponential growth. And many others, but the ones that are actually getting built now are the most significant ones. Healthcare. Healthcare is what we are attempting to build is a nationwide ecosystem. It's not a project, it is an ecosystem, it's a network, it's a platform. So we are trying to bring the power of a platform into a conventional space, combining everything that has got done thus far by various governments and bringing in the private sector to add innovation on top of that. So the beauty of this kind of an experiment is that when you have a national ecosystem in healthcare, you have a huge number of problems to solve for 1 billion people. And whoever gets to solve them better than anyone else is going to grow rapidly because they have 1 billion customers to grow with. And the moment you grow with that, the customer acquisition cost, which is typically a very serious cost everywhere, you are walking into a space where the customers are looking for you. And the customer acquisition cost gets reduced dramatically because you are part of a completely new ecosystem. There are problems to solve and you are solving it at the billion scale. So this is starting to happen in health. It is happening in education. It is happening today in logistics. It is happening in agriculture and primary sector. We see early indications of this in the urban governance and smart cities. We see something like this start to happen in skills and jobs, and also in the area of combining the policing and justice systems. And these are all areas where a tremendous number of problems need to be solved. So by bringing everything together in a harmonized ecosystem, bringing in regulatory sandboxes, bringing in developmental test beds, we are able to invite companies to innovate, to build on top of this huge ecosystem, but to do it in a fair way for themselves and for the customers. So this is something where I would say that we have already seen 17 unicorns emerge in fintech alone, and I would now expect dozens of unicorns in the next 3 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years in healthcare, similarly in education, similarly in agriculture, and each of these areas, because it'll be, and the ones that grow, remember that they start with a billion-strong market. They don't even have a 10x to attempt after that, and they are global.
No, that's actually, I totally agree with you. I think what has been done in things like UPI and Aadhaar is actually path-breaking in terms of just the low cost of transactions. And there is so much that can be exported out of this expertise and next generation apps that the Indian firms will have the experience with. So Sunil, using the same argument for hardware. So clearly when I think of, I don't know if that's going to really work, but say the next big buzzword is the metaverse, right? So augmented reality, virtual reality, displays which have low lag and therefore don't cause dizziness, very high quality assembly and audio, etc. Now, when you see the Indian ecosystem emerge, right? So if say your firm was to become one of the giants, like say a Foxconn, would you need that ecosystem around you? Because that's where the engineers jump ship, they create expertise from one firm to the other, and even local industry bodies collectively contest against other clusters globally. Do you see that happening? Do you see that happening in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so you talked about opportunities around the metaverse, and also Mr. Sahni talked about the opportunities in addressing needs of a billion people. So I think we in India need to look at what are our strengths and what are the opportunities that we could address and what are the low-hanging fruits. So if I were to look at an opportunity for, let's say, a low-cost 4G phone, right? And I think the world is looking at right now, although the world is moving towards 5G, but there's also very, very large demand for low-cost smartphones. So if you especially look at markets in Africa, even developed countries like US, right? I know there's a large demand for the sub $100 phone, which companies are bundling along with the service. So I think India can definitely address that particular market. We have the strength in hardware manufacturing. Our labor costs are probably one of the lowest. Our productivity is as good, if not better, as compared to our neighboring countries. So we should look at these opportunities. We should see that how we could encourage companies to invest more in design. And I think one of the issues that I want to address is that we as an industry and as a country are not investing large sums into designing our products. And I think there are many, many reasons for that. But I think if I were to address one critical issue, is that there is a huge stigma built around failure in our country, right? And unless we encourage companies to fail, or we accept that failure, I think companies would not be really, startups would not be investing in R&D. Also, arranging funding for these companies to invest in R&D. So I remember, I recall we started a design company for set-top boxes. I'm talking about many years back. And I think we had to go to a bank for lack of, an alternative funding. And I think the bank's first thing they said that, what's your business plan? Are you going to be profitable in the next 2 years? What's the collateral that you can give? So I'm not saying that banks should start lending without collateral, but what I'm saying is that we need to create alternate mechanisms for companies to borrow more easily, for creating investing, more fund of funds, and also encouraging companies to invest in R&D, because I think that's the way forward. And I think talking about your point of creating an ecosystem, I think it's extremely important that we have a large ecosystem of manufacturing, both of Indian champions and multinationals investing in the sector. And that, again, I would like to really appreciate and laud the PLI scheme and really the thought process that went behind it. Because if you see, in PLI, the way it's structured, it encourages both Indian companies and multinational companies. They're parallel tracks, right, where they can grow. So I think we need more schemes like PLIs. We need more companies to invest in component ecosystem. We need more companies to come forward and invest in design. And I think that's the way we'll go forward.
Thanks very much. I wish I had time to ask all my questions. Now let's quickly shift to audience Q&A. So the first I'll direct to Pranay. You did mention that there is a very strong network or other infrastructure level software that has been created in the Boston corridor, the West Coast, and around the Washington, Seattle area. I think one of the biggest challenges in India right now, so as one venture capitalist was telling me, that was ideas are a commodity, capital is now a commodity. What you don't have is talent.
Yeah.
So people are really struggling. So that's something that I think. So how quickly do you think these challenges can be addressed, and what are the things that are needed and so clearly there's only a limitation to how much you can solve in the next 6 months. But if you're thinking 5-7 years and you really want to be dominant, you said that the Chinese have done exceptionally well in terms of the AI ecosystem. So what are the challenges for India? How do you see this shaping up?
Yeah. So clearly the talent issue is not something that can be solved sort of in the absolute short term. Companies have to address it both in a short-term basis. Companies need to take steps to address the longer term, and at the same time, I think some steps by the government bodies can also be very helpful in this area. And someone has asked a few questions. Let me also address a few pointed questions. Right? Someone said, "How do you hire for an early-stage startup?" As an example. So I'll just talk about specific things right here. And here, I mean, obviously, do not know what the specific need is, but I would say that focus on hiring a few very competent, experienced leaders that are hands-on and leaders that are consistently, hungry, right? And then rely on talent that is has the aptitude, that is hungry, is willing to learn, is fearless, right? And then sort of get them to learn along the way, get them to discover new things, because lots of things are changing in the space, lots of new technologies coming in, right? So I think somewhere, I think what the companies will need to do in the immediate term is to trade down experience a little bit, right? You cannot keep seeking high levels of experience because it does not exist in the quantum that you want. But the good thing is that all of this technology is new and it can be learned, right? So with the right aptitude, with the right, this thing. I think EdTech can make a big difference, right? And moving away from the traditional model of a 4-year degree, a 3-year degree to meet the needs. I think that is something that we can relook, either relooking at that model or supplementing that model. So clearly, supplementing that with digital education, that's a big thing. But how about something radical, right? Let's just say, why should someone do a 4-year degree before they start working? What if they, studied for 6 months, worked for 6 months, went back, studied for 6 months, came back, studied for work for another 6 months? I don't know. I'm just throwing some ideas over here, but I think the point is that that talent shortage is pretty substantial, and I think it's going to continue to be there. And companies will need to do their own things, but equally we'll need to think of new ways of addressing this.
Mr. Sahni, if I could, thanks, Pranay. So the question on standards and protocols, right? So I remember, realizing very early, I mean, it's 20 years back, sitting in Infosys, that if say the MQ series next generation or enterprise application integration protocol was to be developed by someone sitting in IBM, then Infosys will also always be a catch-on, right? And so one of the motivations for us was trying to get involved in the standard setting exercise itself. So you mentioned that on the 5G we have two full stack solutions, but clearly 5G is not passé. I mean, it's still getting implemented, but that battle was, I think, 4 or 5 years back. But when we're thinking 6G, I mean, how does India get involved in the standard setting so that the Indian ecosystem gets more time to prepare in terms of software and hardware?
See, there are two battles that will happen. One is that, one is the battle for the being the frontier, being at the frontier. And the second is the battle for size. Now, what is interesting in 5G, especially when you go from the beginning of initial stage of 5G deeper into that technology and then towards 6G, is that the value add on account of software rises significantly. So it's quite possible that if we have our models architected somewhat differently, and I expect them to be of that nature, the hardware would really become commodity, and software is where the value will lie, which plays right into this area of strength for Indian giants. So, and then the second strength that you can leverage is the market size in India, and our ability to do things at a fraction of the cost. So the moment you start doing, any interesting technology that starts grabbing customers is something to watch out for. After that, you can't argue with the numbers. So it needs to start with a focus on our area of strength, which is software. They make use of the characteristic that more and more software-led plays will happen in 5G and 6G, and then build momentum by leveraging our size and scale of not just India, but of many other markets very similar to ours, which are very uncomfortable with some of the current options or limited options that are available.
Thanks, Mr. Sahni. So taking another audience question. So we are taking audience questions. I think we are just left with like 2-3 minutes. But so this is again a question to Sunil in terms of domestic brand presence. So do you see Indian brands emerging first in the domestic market and then using that scale to see a much greater presence abroad?
So I think two questions were asked. One was about the opportunity for EMS companies in India, electronic manufacturing services company in India, and how they're likely to evolve. And second was on Indian brands. So first, I'll answer the question on the opportunities that are there in electronic manufacturing services company. I think we've seen that even large brands globally are now looking at an asset-light strategy, and they believe that they need to focus on their strength of distribution, marketing, and R&D, and really subcontracting the manufacturing. And this we see happening across sectors and across many brands. So I think there is a huge opportunity that exists as far as electronic manufacturing services is concerned. But I think what we need to do as an industry is to evolve from pure prescriptive EMS manufacturing to emerging as own design manufacturers. Right, so wherein you're designing your products and offering it to the brands as a black box strategy. So we in our company are consciously moving more, from EMS to 100% ODM. In some of the sectors like lighting and appliances, we have moved to almost 100% own design manufacturing product. And the strategy is to do, and the vision is to do this across verticals. So I think this is where the opportunity lies. You talked about can Indian brands emerge out of the country? I think absolutely it's possible. And if you look at, let's say, the history of a product like mobile phone, if I look at about 5 years back, there were dominant Indian players in the industry. In fact, I would say that the industry, Indian players had almost like a 80-85% of the market share. But I think where we did go wrong was that we did not invest, in the backward integration. We did not invest too much in the R&D again, and we did not really invest, in the brand building and really trying to go global. So I think we have learned from our mistakes, and we see that now Indian brands are trying to re-emerge in these sectors. And I think by investing more and more into the sectors the areas that I talked about, we see Indian brands emerging and also becoming global players. But a lot will have to be done for that to happen.
So thanks. So I know we've run out of time, but there was one final question which, Mr. Sahni, if I could, so this was directed at you. Do you think the Indian companies like Tata, I guess it was on the auto side because Tesla is a competitor, that can Indian companies really compete with global giants like Tesla when it comes to say autos and auto electronics?
Yeah, I would see companies emerge from I hope I got the question right, but I would see companies emerge from a slightly different segment. The companies that address two-wheeler market space, if they grow with numbers, I think they would grow in that segment as well. Tata's and the existing players in automotive side are also have announced very good plans, and I believe the overall ecosystem is very conducive for them to move quickly today. So there is a PLI scheme in that as well. If PLI has the same kind of an impact that the one for mobile phones has shown, it's good news for automotive electronics.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we're already 3 minutes over time. So in this count, let me thank my brilliant panelists for their very candid and very well thought through answers, and hand it over to Raghav to close the session.
Yeah, I think I'll also just echo Neelkanth's closing remarks. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us. And there was a very long list of attendees who were here and who were listening and actively participating. So I'm sure they benefited from all of your comments. Thank you again very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Raghav.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.